Hey Army, it's me, Taehyung. It's been a while since I sat down and just talked like this. No cameras flashing, no stage lights, just me, my thoughts, and maybe your quiet company somewhere out there. Sometimes, when the world slows down a little, I start thinking about things that don't usually fit into our daily chaos, like love, home, and the place I want to get married someday. I know it sounds strange coming from me, right? But honestly, this thought has lived quietly inside me for years. It's not something I talk about often. Maybe because it's not really about the ceremony or the event, it's more about the feeling of it. I've always imagined my wedding not as a big, loud celebration, but something small, intimate. A moment that feels like breathing calm, simple, honest. There's a place I've dreamed of for as long as I can remember. It's not a church or a hall, not even a luxury hotel. It's somewhere deep in the countryside, near the Han River, where the grass dances with the wind and the sky feels close enough to touch. When I was younger, my grandmother used to take me to a small village near Daegu. I remember the smell of wet soil after rain, the way sunlight broke through the trees, and how the air always felt gentle, like it understood everything you couldn't say. That place somehow became my idea of peace. So, if you ask me where I'd want to get married, it wouldn't be Paris or New York or some island resort. It would be there in that quiet countryside where the wind carries memories. I want it to be outdoors. No stage, no spotlight, just a wooden arch, some flowers that smell like spring, and maybe the sound of a guitar somewhere in the background. And if it rains, I want it to rain softly, not enough to ruin anything, just enough to make it all more beautiful. Sometimes I imagine myself standing there, looking at the person I love and thinking, this is home. I think about what it would mean to me not just as a man or as an artist, but as someone who's been loved by so many and still learning how to give that love back in the right way. You know, people often see us, me, BTS, as people who are constantly surrounded by lights, noise, and attention. But the truth is, behind all that, I've always been searching for silence. That kind of silence that doesn't feel empty but peaceful. The kind you share with someone who understands your quiet. Maybe that's what my dream wedding really is about. It's not about the place, it's about the peace that place gives. There's something sacred about being able to share your silence with someone. You don't need to talk or smile or perform. You just exist, and that's enough. Sometimes, when I can't sleep at night, I picture that moment. The wind moving through the trees, my family sitting under lanterns that sway just a little, the smell of flowers and rain. Her eyes soft, calm looking at me like she knows what I've been through without needing to ask. And I smile. Because even if it's just a dream, it's the kind that makes you want to become a better person when you wake up. When I was younger, I thought marriage was just about love two people who liked each other, spending their lives together. But as I grew up, I learned it's more than that. It's about growth, about patience, about holding space for each other when life gets heavy. I've seen my parents go through that, not the fairy tale kind of love, but the real one. The kind where you argue, you forgive, and you still choose each other every single morning. That's the love I want to have. That's the love I want to celebrate. I don't want a perfect wedding. I want one that feels alive. One where laughter doesn't sound rehearsed and where I can look around and see faces that have been with me since the beginning. My family, my members, my friends, my fans, even if you're watching from far away, I'd want you to be part of that day somehow. I want that place to hold all of it, my past, my present, and the beginning of my future. There's this tree near that village I told you about. It's old, older than my grandparents, probably. Every spring, its branches turn white with blossoms. I remember touching its bark once when I was little, and my grandmother said, "If you make a wish here, the wind will carry it for you." That memory never left me. So if that place ever becomes my wedding spot, I think I'd want that same tree to be there as if it's watching over me, carrying the same wind that once touched my childhood. Maybe I sound sentimental, I know I do, but it's who I am. For me, emotions aren't something to hide. They're what make everything meaningful. I think sometimes people forget that love isn't always about big gestures. It's in the quiet things, in waiting for someone even when you're tired, in listening without interrupting, in knowing when to hold their hand even if they don't ask. If I ever get married, I want that to be the foundation of it. Not fireworks, not luxury, not headlines, just real, honest love. And maybe somewhere in that countryside, surrounded by the people who taught me how to love, I'll finally say, "This is where I belong." You know, when I talk about that place, it's not just about a wedding, it's about returning, going back to something pure, something that reminds me who I am without the noise. When I imagine myself standing there in that countryside field, I can hear things most people overlook. The wind brushing past tall grass, the distant sound of a train somewhere, the quiet hum of the earth just being alive. I think that's what I crave the most. Not the performance, not the perfection, but the honesty of nature. I've always felt connected to nature. Maybe that's why I love photography so much. When I take pictures, it's like I'm freezing a small truth, something fragile, something people might miss if they weren't paying attention. And maybe that's also what love is, noticing. Noticing the little things, the way someone laughs before they try to hide it, the way they say your name differently than anyone else, or how they look at you when they think you're not watching. Those small details, they become memories. And those memories become the rhythm of a relationship. If I ever get married, I don't want a perfect love. I want a real one full of laughter, confusion, and moments where you both have to choose to understand instead of giving up. Because I've learned that love is a practice, not a performance. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever really be ready for marriage. I mean, it's such a big thing, right? The idea of standing there promising forever, it's beautiful, but it's also terrifying. I'm the kind of person who overthinks. I analyze feelings, I observe silence, I notice tone maybe too much. But I think it's because when I love deeply. I don't want to rush something that's supposed to last a lifetime. I once asked my dad, "How did you know mom was the one?" He laughed, then said, "I didn't know. I chose every day." That stayed with me. It made me realize that maybe love isn't about knowing, it's about choosing. Choosing that person even when it's hard, choosing to stay when everything feels heavy, choosing to grow together even when life tries to pull you apart. So when I think of my dream wedding, I imagine myself standing under that big old tree, maybe nervous, maybe trembling a bit, but sure not because I know what the future holds. but because I choose to walk into it with someone who understands my heart. There's something comforting about that. And you know what else? I don't need it to be perfect. If my suit gets wrinkled or if it rains halfway through the vows, I think that would make it even better. Because that's real life. Life doesn't wait for perfect weather. When I imagine the people there, I see faces that have walked with me through different parts of my story. My parents smiling, probably crying a little. My members teasing me, making jokes, but secretly emotional inside. And ARMY, even if you're not physically there, I can imagine you watching, smiling, maybe saying, he finally did it. Because in a way, you've all been part of this journey. You've seen me grow from that playful boy who laughed too much into the man I'm still becoming. You've seen me through music, through silence, through the moments where I wasn't sure of myself. So if that day ever comes, it wouldn't just be my wedding, it would be a chapter we all wrote together. I think about what song would play when we walk together, maybe something soft, something that feels like morning, maybe Winter Bear, or something I'd write just for that moment. A song that doesn't try too hard but just feels like home. Because that's what I want love to feel like home. Not excitement, not perfection, not fireworks, just peace. Sometimes I wonder if it's strange, someone like me who's seen the world, who's met thousands of people, still dreaming of something so simple. But maybe that's the point. The more you see, the more you realize how precious simplicity really is. If you asked me what my favorite moment in life is, it wouldn't be the stage, or the awards, or the cameras. It would be those quiet nights when I sit by the window, the city asleep, and I can finally hear my own thoughts again. That's where I meet myself. That's where I remember the boy who used to run through fields in Daegu barefoot, laughing, dreaming of a world that felt gentle. I think that's who I want to be on my wedding day, not V from BTS, but just Taehyung, the boy who loves art, who talks to the wind, who finds poetry in silence. That's the version of me that deserves to stand there and say, I do. You know, sometimes I talk to myself not out loud, but in my head about the kind of husband I want to be, someone kind, someone patient, someone who makes her feel safe, not just loved. Because I've learned that being loved isn't always the same as being understood. And if there's one thing I want to give, it's understanding. Maybe that's why I talk about that countryside so much. It's not just where I want to get married, it's where I understand myself the most. The colors, the air, the way time slows down, it all reminds me that real happiness isn't loud, it's quiet. And I think that's what I want my marriage to be, quiet happiness. I think about what my grandmother would say if she could see me there. She used to tell me, when your heart feels peaceful, that's when you've found the right person. She was right, because I don't want someone who makes my heart race. I want someone who makes it rest. There's beauty in stillness. There's beauty in peace. And if I ever get to share that with someone under that same sky that raised me, then I think that's all I could ever ask for. So, yeah, that's my dream wedding. Not grand, not extravagant, just real. The countryside, the wind, my family, the people I love, and the feeling that after all these years, I've finally found a place that feels like forever. You know, people often ask me, Taehyung, what does forever mean to you? And I always hesitate before answering because forever sounds like such a heavy word, like something that demands perfection or promises that can never break. But for me, forever isn't about endless time. It's about endless meaning. I've seen people come and go. I've watched relationships fade not because they stopped loving each other, but because they forgot why they loved each other in the first place. So when I think about marriage, about that place I dream of, I think about keeping that why alive. I don't want to love someone because of what she gives me. I want to love her because of who I become when I'm with her. I want to look at her and see the version of me that feels at peace. There's something sacred about that kind of connection when two souls don't try to complete each other but complement each other. It's not about filling a void, it's about recognizing another light and saying, I see you, let's walk together. Sometimes I wonder if that's why I'm so drawn to art. When I paint or take photographs, I'm not trying to capture beauty, I'm trying to understand it. Maybe love works the same way. You never really capture it, you just learn how to see it better. When I was younger, I used to think love had to be dramatic. You know, grand gestures, passionate confessions, fireworks. But life has taught me something softer. Love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it just stands beside you quietly without needing to say a thing. There were times in my life when I thought I was in love moments that felt intense, magical even. But looking back, I realized that sometimes we mistake intensity for depth. The kind of love I want now isn't about fire, it's about warmth. Something that lasts long after the flames settle. I once wrote in my notebook, I don't want to be someone's highlight. I want to be their quiet place. That line stayed with me because I think that's what real love should feel like coming home after a long day where you can finally breathe and just be, you know, being part of BTS. I've lived through so many moments that felt unreal. Stages filled with millions of lights, fans singing together, emotions so big they almost burst through the sky. But in between all that, there were also quiet nights, hotel rooms, where the only sound was my own breathing, my own thoughts. Those were the nights I realized how much I longed for connection. Not attention, not adoration, just real, quiet connection. Someone who could sit next to me in silence and make it feel full instead of empty. That's what that countryside place represents to me. It's not about isolation, it's about connection with myself, with nature, and hopefully with someone who understands both. There's a small hill there just behind the field I talked about. From the top, you can see the whole valley, the houses, the trees, even the river in the distance. I remember standing there once, maybe at 17, with my camera. The wind was cold and the sky looked like it was painted with every color I couldn't name. And I thought, someday I want to share this view with someone who will see it the same way I do. That thought never left me. Maybe that's my definition of forever sharing your favorite view with someone and realizing they see it as beautifully as you do. I think love, like art, needs patience. You can't rush a masterpiece. You can't rush understanding. You have to sit with it. Let it breathe. Let it teach you things you didn't even know you needed to learn. And sometimes that means waiting. People often ask me if I'm afraid of waiting too long, afraid of missing out. But I don't think love works like that. If something is meant for you, it doesn't pass you by. It might take time, but it finds you when you're ready. I used to be scared of growing older. I thought youth was everything, that once you lose it, everything changes. But now I see it differently. Growing older means growing deeper. It means understanding love not as excitement but as endurance. I've learned that you don't find love by searching. You find it by becoming the kind of person who can love fully. That's why I'm in no rush. When the time comes, I want to meet her as someone who has already found peace within himself. Because if you're not at peace with yourself, you'll always ask love to fill the emptiness. And that's too heavy for anyone to carry. Sometimes I think about that wedding day like a movie scene. Not in a fancy way, just simple moments stitched together like film frames. My mother adjusting my tie, my dad trying to act calm but clearly emotional, my members teasing me during the vows, laughter, wind, the smell of flowers. And then there's her standing there, smiling, maybe nervous too. And in that moment, everything else disappears. The noise, the fame, the weight of the world. It's just two people choosing each other. I think that's what makes love so powerful. It doesn't erase your past, it gives it meaning. Every heartbreak, every lonely night, every doubt, they all lead you to the person who makes it all make sense. So if you ask me again what forever means, it means waking up one day and realizing you're still excited to hear her laugh. It means choosing kindness when you could choose pride. It means seeing her flaws and loving her anyway. And maybe that countryside wedding is my way of honoring that kind of love, pure, grounded, steady, the kind that doesn't try to impress anyone, just exists like sunlight, quiet but undeniable. I think deep down that's the only kind of forever I want. You know, sometimes people look at me and think I've always been this calm, composed, romantic guy. But honestly, I wasn't always like that. There were times when I was broken, when I thought love wasn't meant for someone like me. It's funny, right? You can be surrounded by thousands of people, millions even, and still feel completely alone. That was me during some of the hardest nights of my life. I think that's why I started dreaming about that countryside place more often. It became a symbol, a reminder that peace was possible even when the world felt loud. When I couldn't sleep, I used to close my eyes and imagine that quiet hill, that open field. I could almost feel the wind brushing against my skin, hear the grass moving softly like a whisper. That dream became my escape, but also my promise to myself. You see, there was someone I thought I'd share that place with. We had plans, or at least I thought we did. We used to talk about everything about music, art, even what kind of flowers would bloom around that field when spring came. She was gentle, not loud or flashy, just warm, like morning sunlight. But sometimes two people can love each other deeply and still not be meant to last. Life happens. Schedules, distance, silence. The small cracks start to appear, and before you know it, they've grown too wide to cross. I remember the day it ended. We were both quiet. There were no tears, no anger, just two people who had loved each other but didn't know how to stay. And after she left, that countryside dream felt different. It wasn't a dream anymore, it was a memory of something that never got to happen. I stopped visiting that place for a while, even in my mind, because every time I pictured it, I saw her standing there. and I wasn't ready for that. People think heartbreak fades with time, but it doesn't, not really. It just changes its shape. At first, it's sharp like glass, then it becomes soft like fog. It's still there, just less visible. But you know what I learned? Heartbreak isn't the opposite of love, it's part of it. It teaches you things that happiness never could. It makes you gentle, it makes you see people differently. I learned that love isn't about holding on tightly. Sometimes it's about letting go gracefully, and that's something I wish I understood earlier. When I finally went back to that countryside spot years later, it wasn't with sadness anymore. It was with gratitude. Because even though that chapter ended, it gave me words, emotions, and a deeper understanding of myself. I stood on that hill again, same spot, same wind. But this time it felt lighter. I looked out at the horizon and whispered, "Thank you." Not to her, not to fate, just to the moment. Because that's what love really is, a collection of moments that shape who you are. And maybe that's why I dream of getting married there. It's not just about beauty, it's about memory, healing, and starting again in the same place where I once felt lost. To me, that's powerful. Sometimes I imagine my future self standing there again this time, not alone. Maybe she's beside me, holding my hand. Maybe she doesn't know what that place once meant to me. And maybe she doesn't have to, because her presence alone would give it a new meaning. That's the beauty of love. It gives new color to old places. It turns pain into peace. It makes the world feel familiar again. I think that's why I'm drawn to quiet places. I don't like grand gestures when it comes to love. I like small, quiet things like someone bringing you tea because they noticed you're tired, or sitting beside you without asking why you're sad. That's real love to me. Sometimes I think about how my life looks from the outside stages, lights, people screaming my name, and it's beautiful. I'm endlessly grateful for it. But the version of me that dreams about that wedding, he doesn't want an audience. He just wants peace. I imagine the ceremony being small, maybe just family, my members, a few close friends. No cameras, no noise, just laughter, soft music, the smell of flowers, and the sound of the wind. I'd probably sing a song not for the world, but just for her. Something simple, raw, maybe even a little off key, but filled with emotion. Because love isn't about perfection, it's about sincerity. And if I ever get to say my vows there, I think I'd say something like this. I've learned that love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who reminds you that you were already whole. That's what I want my marriage to represent, not the end of a search, but the beginning of something peaceful. A quiet joy that doesn't need to be seen, only felt. I think about that hill often, how it's seen me through everything: youth, heartbreak, hope, healing. It's strange, but in some way, it's like that place raised me too. Every time I go back there in my mind, it feels like I'm returning home to the truest version of myself. That's what love should do. It should bring you home. And maybe one day, when I stand there again, I won't just be Taehyung the singer or Taehyung the dreamer. I'll be Taehyung, the man who found peace, love, and forever all in one place. Sometimes I think about the kind of person I'd want to stand beside me in that place, the person I'd marry, the one who'd share that view with me. People always ask what my ideal type is, but I've never liked that question. Because love isn't a list you can write down and check off. It's a feeling, something you recognize, not something you plan. But if I had to describe it, I think I'd say this. I want someone whose heart feels like home. Someone who can sit in silence with me and still make it feel full. Someone who doesn't need to fix me or understand every part of me. Just someone who accepts me as I am in all my quiet, complicated ways. I think I've learned that love shouldn't demand performance. When you love someone, you shouldn't have to act stronger or happier than you really are. Love should be the one place where you can finally let go of everything, where you can breathe and just be. There's something beautiful about two people who can coexist without forcing each other to change too much. I don't want to lose myself in someone. I want to find myself with them. The truth is, I've met so many people in my life, fans, friends, artists, and every interaction has taught me something about connection. But real intimacy isn't about how much time you spend together. It's about how deeply you see each other. Sometimes I wonder how it would feel to come home after a long tour, the exhaustion, the silence, after the noise, and to have someone there who doesn't ask for anything. No questions, no expectations, just someone who holds your hand and says, "Welcome back." I think that kind of love is rare, quiet but rare. When I think about my future wife, I don't imagine perfection. I imagine realness. Someone who gets moody sometimes, who laughs too loud, who forgets things, but who has a good heart. Someone who knows that love isn't just romance, it's patience, it's forgiveness, it's choosing each other even when it's hard. I want her to have her own world too, her dreams, her passions. I want us to grow together but not lose ourselves in the process. Because love isn't about merging into one. It's about walking side by side, in sync but still free. I think about how she'd react to that countryside place. Would she love it as much as I do? Would she wake up early just to watch the mist rise from the valley the way I do? Would she laugh when I take too many pictures of the same view? Maybe she'd tease me for being sentimental. Maybe she'd say, "Tai, you're always lost in your thoughts." And maybe I'd smile and reply, "Yeah, but you're the thought I always get lost in." It sounds simple, right? But that's the kind of love I want, the kind that feels like breathing. Effortless, gentle, real. There's something sacred about sharing ordinary moments with someone you love. Cooking breakfast together, hanging laundry in the Sunday, watching movies in silence. That's what I crave more than grand gestures. The small, daily things that slowly build a lifetime. You know, I used to think that love had to be exciting all the time. But now I realize peace is the most beautiful excitement there is. When you find someone who gives you peace, that's when you've truly found love. I imagine that wedding day sometimes not in detail, but in feeling. The calm, the warmth, the sound of laughter echoing between trees. Maybe a small group of family and friends, maybe even my members joking around in the back. It wouldn't need to be perfect, just real. And when she walks down the path toward me, I think I'd feel that stillness, that moment where the world slows down and everything feels right. I wouldn't see her as a perfect person, I'd see her as my person. the one who chose me, even when I wasn't easy to love. And maybe that's what makes love powerful, not the idea of finding the one, but the courage to stay when things get hard. Because love isn't about always being happy, it's about always coming back. Sometimes I think about what kind of husband I'd be. Would I be funny, quiet, protective? I think I'd be observant, the kind who notices when she's tired just from the way she puts down her cup, the kind who remembers the little things she says in passing and surprises her later, the kind who never stops saying thank you because love isn't something you're entitled to. It's something you nurture every day. I want to grow old with someone who still makes me laugh, even when our hair turns gray. Someone who still holds my hand when we cross the street. Someone who still looks at me the same way she did when we first met. And maybe years from now, we'll go back to that countryside hill, the same one I've always dreamed of. We'd stand there, older, quieter, maybe even with our kids running around, and I'd tell her, you know, I dreamed about this before I met you. And she'd smile and say, then I guess your dream came true. I think that's what love really is, a dream that slowly becomes your life. Not because it's perfect, but because it's true. I don't know when or how I'll meet her, but I know that when I do, I'll recognize her not by how she looks, but by how she makes me feel. Calm, safe, understood, like the world finally stops spinning too fast. And when that day comes, when I stand with her in that place I've dreamed of, I think I'll finally understand what destiny means. It's not about fate choosing for you. It's about the heart recognizing what it's always been waiting for. You know, as I sit here thinking about everything I've said, I realize something. All my dreams, the countryside, the quiet mornings, the laughter, the love, they're not really about a place. They're about peace. A kind of peace that feels like home, no matter where you are. I think that's what marriage for me really means. It's not just a ceremony or a promise. It's two souls agreeing to walk through life together, through the calm and the chaos, and still choose each other every single day. When I close my eyes, I can still see that hill. The sunlight falling softly through the trees, the grass swaying, the sound of wind carrying distant laughter. That's my dream. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. I don't know when I'll get married or if that dream will ever happen exactly the way I imagine. But I know one thing for sure. When it does, I want it to be with someone who understands the quiet parts of me. Someone who loves not just the artist, not the performer, but the man who finds happiness in small things. To me, that's what love is, not fireworks, not fantasy, but comfort. It's the feeling of coming home after a long day and realizing that you don't have to pretend anymore. You can just be yourself, and that's enough. Maybe that's why I hold on to that countryside image so tightly. It reminds me that no matter how fast life moves, there's always a place and maybe a person waiting for me to slow down. So when people ask me what kind of wedding I want, I just smile. Because it's not really about the dress or the flowers or the guests. It's about the moment. That quiet, beautiful moment when two people look at each other and silently say, we made it. And if I ever get to live that moment in that little corner of nature I've always dreamed of, I'll whisper to the wind, this is it, this is home,